If you're running Impact 13.1 for the first time coming from version 12 or earlier, there are some changes. There's the color scheme and a little bit with the layout. First, some really cool stuff under Help. We have these manuals for our vision processors, which includes I/O connection and also GigE camera connections, as well as the P2 reference manual. This reference guide is the Impact reference guide when you press F1. We've got expanded sample programs and a new smart camera monitor. Another great feature that I really love is the optics calculator was standalone and now it's included with VPM. In version 12, you remember the toolbox. You can click to expand or collapse the toolbox. In version 13, it's always here in the lower left corner. Another great change is under the connection dialog box. If you click on a smart camera, you can now update the smart camera firmware by clicking this button. If you click the Identify push button, that selected smart camera's bezel will flash blue. Another thing you'll notice here in the project tree in the upper left corner, we've got our connected devices shown vertically. And you recall from Impact 12 and earlier, there are these tabs across the top. In version 12, to switch programs, you might remember this icon. All three of these programs are loaded and you can switch among them here. In version 13 in the project tree, you can expand each camera and see all of the programs that are running in it. So you could break it up by different inspections or data analysis or communications for really long or complicated programs. Most often, there's a single inspection program with multiple tasks below it. There's also some improvements to the image archive tool in the communication drawer. Image archive. If we drag it into a program, we have the expected FTP, but we also have secure FTP, which a lot of IT departments really love and some require. We have two different versions, one with a public key, and also we have the file system folder, meaning on an MX you can save it to a connected USB drive that's mapped to a drive letter in Windows. Another great improvement is to the blob tool. It performs better and it's faster. Let's explore the smart camera monitor, which is simply display mode from any Chromium-based browser. So we have a program loaded and some images. And if we go to a browser, you might be familiar with these different commands to trigger and get the status, which shows hardware and software version numbers, and the system log, which is an error log with date timestamps. But if you type in the base IP address of the camera, you get the smart camera monitor. The biggest thing we've improved in Impact 13 are the color tools. So we have a greater bit depth, and we can do things like this where we have taught many different models or colors, and you can see this identified the taught model 0, and as we go through each one of these, model 4, and so on. For the most part, there's color classification and color verification. Color identify is for color classification. I teach these 5 colors, which one do I have? And for color verification, where we need to make sure it's the correct shade of blue, for example, then we have the color pixel counter. The hardest part of setting up color tools is adjusting these thresholds. Fortunately, we have this awesome histogram. We've got 3 axes for hue, saturation, and lightness. So hue is like the color wheel from kindergarten. Saturation is like how intense is the color, and lightness is just whether it's bright or dark. If you maximize this, we've got the nominal setting and the plus or minus tolerance, and we can set them right here on the histogram based on the found colors. Our P2 smart camera does demosaicing in hardware. Most color cameras have this Bayer filter where half the pixels have a green filter above them, 1/4 have red, 1/4 have blue, and you use interpolation between the red filtered pixels to come up with an estimate of what the red value of other pixels would be. And that process is called demosaicing. And again, the P2 does that in hardware, so it's super fast. CIE LAB color space is amazing because it was made to codify the way people perceive color. And to help understand it a little bit better, Wikipedia has these great videos that shows red, green, blue. And notice how green is just kind of that little corner. And with CIE LAB, you can kind of see how green takes up much more volume. You can threshold numerically on a greater range of numbers of green because people can perceive more shades of green than any other color. The funnest part about our new color tools is the color space tool. And why this is so amazing is that in addition to the HSL model we saw, we also have a similar model HSV, and we have the native red, green, blue, and we have this amazing CIE LAB color model. What's great about these different spaces is one of these probably offers the best contrast between your good and bad parts. Next up, you might know we have context sensitive help as expected, where I click on a tool, I press F1, I'm here at the Impact Reference Guide, and I'm on the Vision Program Manager section on the tool I selected, and there's a table that describes each property, and more importantly, beyond that, there's an example that includes some good information about how to use the tool. The other part I wanted to talk to you about is expanded HTTP commands. These browser commands are really helpful in startup, and here in the index, we've got a lot more of them. So check that out. Next up, the tools have a new output property of process time. This is in microseconds. Let's talk about OEE, overall equipment efficiency, which basically means increasing uptime or reducing downtime. Here's a Pareto chart of machine vision downtime causes from one plant that shows 80% of downtime hours are because the camera got bumped or the lens got dirty. The P2 smart camera has built-in accelerometers for bump and tilt monitoring. When the camera gets bumped or tilted, you can make the bezel turn red and add an event to the system log with a date timestamp and write to the PLC. Our vision processors running Windows 10 IoT have the system protection tool. If the boot sector gets corrupted from powering down unexpectedly, it will protect against that by booting off of protected memory instead of the hard drive. On the left, we have legacy products. These Windows XP vision processors really need to be upgraded if you have any in use now. You can do that with 12.2.5, the long-term release of Impact. And then if your cameras are still working, you can keep them. The industrial PC is the part that needs upgrading. And you get the benefit of the system protection tool on our newer vision processors. Version 13.1 is for our P2 smart cameras. When you go up to the P2, you do need 13.1.